growing menace of mutant violence.
My fellow Americans, I am an idiot.
Side by side to end this war.
Raw for days.
Sour things do bad things.
It's like I ate out a vagina made of razors.
Awesome. How'd that go?
It's going.
Well, just because I feel this is really appropriate for what we want to discuss, I must do this. Hold on one sec.
Previously on Xmen.
So of course, the new X-Men movie has come out. I haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, but it is on my to fuck list. But you have, correct?
Yep. Yeah, I went to see it Friday afternoon.
How honest opinion? I know we've talked about it a little bit, but let's start
okay,
with,
a quickie review for people that wish to avoid the likely spoilers that we'll probably get into after this is that on a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it a solid 9, maybe even a 9.5. It was that good. It's my new favorite X-Men movie. It's cool seeing all the new people in the movie, and some of them are just kind of there because they're there to be pretty, but at least their powers are cool. You get to see them use their powers in a cool way. Like Blink is there. You don't really get to know much about her character, but she's like the new Nightcrawler. As far as having scenes where she's just completely balls awesome. But no, I would. It's very worth seeing. I would go see it. I didn't see it in 3D, so I can't really speak to whether or not it's worth to pay the extra money to do it. Although I can imagine some of the scenes with Blink's little portals that she puts up would maybe be pretty cool in 3D. And I would go ahead and say it's a Blu-ray buy probably.
Really?
Yeah.
I could see that. Now, at this point, this makes the 6th or 7th? No.
There was the original 3, then the 2 Wolverine movies, then First Class. So this would be the 7th, yeah.
Yeah. And I forget where I got this piece of information from, but Hugh Jackman has said the most badass thing on the planet, to where he wants the last time he plays Wolverine, he wants it battling the Hulk. And I want that too.
That would be pretty awesome. The problem you'll run into with there is
let's ignore all of those problems. We're aware that Fox owns one thing and Disney owns another thing, so that's going to be a pain in the ass. But that does mean that Hugh Jackman will be Wolverine forever.
I think he's winding down. I think he said he might have 1 or 2 more movies in him. So he's probably going to be in Apocalypse or Age of Apocalypse or whatever they're going to call the movie. I imagine they probably won't do the Age of Apocalypse storyline. It'll probably just be them fighting Apocalypse because they've already fucked with time travel enough with this movie that I don't see them going back to that pony.
Yeah.
I watched a YouTube review, Jeremy Johns, of X-Men, and he did this. He had the same reaction to the opening music that I did, where they're playing the X-Men 2 music, the dun 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 dun, and it just feels like Bryan Singer's "I'm back, bitches."
Very true.
And yeah. Well, I mean, technically he helped produce First Class, but he didn't direct it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this one he's just back. He's full on back. He's in the director's chair, and it definitely felt like he's with the music. He was like, yeah, the master's home.
So I've tried. I haven't rewatched the movies again, and I need to. I would say that there's a different feel and vibe from the X-Men movies when they first came out to what's kind of showing up now. And even though I haven't seen Days of Future Past, the one prior to it, and the Wolverine, just have they have less of a campy vibe and more of like, we're gonna take this shit seriously. Where I feel the first, especially the first three X-Men, were built more like the first three Spider-Men, a little more campy, almost like it didn't take place in the same universe, even though in the X-Men case it did.
I don't know. Like, I think part of it's dependent on directors, and then part of it's just dependent on like leaps forward in the ability to use the technology to make the movies better, and seeing the competition. So like, as the competition has gotten more serious, I think the X-Men movies have gotten more serious to an extent. I mean, they still have some jokey stuff in them, but just like the first X-Men movie, I feel like that was done as best as it could have been when it came out.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, because at the time it didn't have like the Dark Knight, and it didn't have like Iron Man to base like where it should be on. But I think Bryan Singer found his footing in the second movie, because the second movie was a little more serious.
Yeah.
And the second movie for a long time was my favorite X-Men movie. But then when he couldn't direct the third one and they had Brett Ratner do it, it just...
There are parts of the third one that I don't hate, but it's more of the sense that I'm like, ooh, that person's here, and ooh, that person's there, and ooh, look at that thing.
Yeah, except Days of Future Past does that same thing. It does the fan service by like showing these characters, but they're actually allowed to do stuff. So I mean, Days of Future Past does it right. Like, fucking, you gotta get Last Stand. I hate that movie. Like, it has people in it just to have people in it. Like, Angel's in it for like the one scene you see him like fly out of a building. And it's just like, really?
Yeah.
Really? He was just there so that you could say he was there. Like, the Sentinel in the Danger Room's that just there so that you can see the really bad kung fu movie Wire Work that they have Fastball Special.
Yeah. That's at the very beginning of the movie, isn't it?
Yeah, when they're in the Danger Room and Colossus chunks Wolverine, and like, you don't actually see the Sentinel, but you see the prop head roll out.
Yeah.
And it just, it seemed like there were a bunch of characters in Last Stand that were there just so that they could be like, see, we can make a cool X-Men movie without Bryan Singer, except no, you guys can't. And then like just the weird continuity errors in the third one, where like when Magneto starts moving the bridge over to Alcatraz, it's like the middle of the day, and then when it like lands, it's at night. It's like, oh, it took you like 17 hours to move a bridge? Like 2 feet? Just, so bad. And that's one of the, and this gets into spoiler territory-ish. That gets into my favorite part about this movie, which is that it completely erases every other X-Men movie. Oh. Except for First Class.
Really?
Days of Future Past completely erases, or, at least significantly alters major plot points from the other X-Men movies.
So they literally pulled a Marvel. Literally. Whereas, oh, this shit doesn't make sense. We'll bring in a new writer, alternate universe, blah blah blah, bing bang boom, and we can ignore all this other stuff. Did that stuff happen? It did on this other timeline, but now that this event has happened, we can bring back the character that was killed, like Psylocke or something like that.
Essentially, yeah, except it does it in kind of an organic way. Like, you can still go back, you can watch X-Men 1, 2, 3, you can watch both Wolverine movies, and then you can watch Days of Future Past, and then it's like bloop bloop. Yeah. All those are erased.
Well, yeah, let's just assume that Origins didn't happen, because that movie was so bad.
I still like X-Men Origins Wolverine much better than Last Stand.
All I can see is Baraka at the end of that movie.
Yeah, no, and see, like, I think a lot of people confuse the really, really shitty way they did Deadpool in that movie with the whole movie. Like, they hate the whole movie because of Deadpool, and it is a pretty big thing to hate. I'll be honest, it's fucking terrible. But I think by and large, even though like some of the CG's kind of goofy, like with his claws, because they went with like the completely CG claws and it looked
Yeah.
fucking weird. Like, and there's just like I don't know, it's kind of a disappointing story about like how he lost his memory. Like at the end of the movie, you're just kind of like, oh well, that wasn't as epic as I thought it was gonna be.
Well, especially since we know like the Weapon X story, he loses his memory because after the operation, like there was some implanting already being done, but that kind of fucked everything up. Like prior to the implant of the metal skeleton, he lost or he was already getting new memories put in and to help control him more. And then once they did the thing that he supposedly volunteered for, it wiped everything because of how his body had to reset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like whether or not they treated his memory story like it was in the comic didn't really bother me that much. But I think a lot of people overlook some of the strengths of the Wolverine movie. Like you did get to see Gambit, even though he didn't do much. But more importantly, like Liev Schreiber like completely saved Sabretooth for me from that atrocious wrestler they had playing him in the first X-Men movie.
I would say that
They need to George Lucas the first X-Men movie now. They need to just go in and like digitally put Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth in all the scenes in the first X-Men movie.
I would say the first X-Men Sabretooth is more consistent with the Sabretooth that came up after Wolverine shoved his claws in Sabretooth's head, where Sabretooth he was part of the X-Men, he was rebuilding himself and stuff like that, but because of all the brain damage, wrestler Wolverine from the first X-Men movie is the same Wolverine that you got in the in that comic, or well, in that part of the comic storyline.
You mean wrestler Sabretooth?
Yes, I said wrestler Wolverine, didn't I?
Yep.
God damn it!
It's okay. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I really liked Victor Creed. To me, has always been interesting, not because he's a brute. I mean, he is, but because he does have kind of like a malicious intellect about him, and Liev Schreiber's portrayal of it was much more in line with Victor from the comics, or at least the stories I liked, than the wrestler guy that they gave like one line to in the first
Well,
movie.
I mean, thank God they did that, but like the '90s cartoon that we grew up on, that intro came from, he
he's
did-
kind of stupid in the '90s cartoon.
yeah,
too.
and I think it was the character that they kind of created as just a protagonist to Wolverine. It's like, oh, we need a hand for hire, so we're going to keep showing this guy back up, and then somebody finally took interest in him and was like, all right, let's give this character a little bit more than just a like, you're the guy. When they
Well, I mean, his character existed before the cartoon and was perfectly fine. The X-Men '90s cartoon, while it's still fun and it is awesome that it is on Netflix,
wait, what?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, no, it's on Netflix, or it was the last time I looked. It may have been one of the ones they got rid of, but
Goodbye, Sunday.
yeah, goodbye the rest of the week. Now that you know that, 'cause I think there's like 5 seasons of that shit, 5 or 6 seasons.
I'm good all the way up until like season 3. After they start dealing with people in fucking space, I'm like done.
They also have like the entirety of Wolverine in the X-Men, which was actually pretty good. They have like the one where they're all young that was, I think, more or less based on the Ultimates universe. I never got into that from the first couple of episodes, but I plan on watching it eventually. I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, bunch of X-Men stuff on Netflix. He existed before the '90s cartoon, and his character was cool before then. I think the '90s cartoon just had it took like the most basic version of the characters and put them on the screen because I guess they thought kids wouldn't understand like any kind of complex storylines. So they're like, well, Sabretooth, especially the bad guys, like the bad guys just show up.
Yeah.
They kind of like, there's the episode where they try to give like Juggernaut's backstory as like Professor Xavier's half brother, and he found the magic crystal and shit. Um, like they kind of try to give him a backstory, but he's like the only one. Like Sabretooth just shows up and he's mad all the time. It's just, it's like the most. I don't know. Still liked it. I liked it better than the Spider-Man cartoon. Which, if Chris Corey could hear me say that, he'd probably like shoot me. But
Morph had a good backstory because like he started off in the show and then they killed him and then they brought him back.
And he's an example of a character that's just like Harley Quinn from the animated series of Batman that wasn't a character. He was invented for the show, and then he was so popular that they, kind of transferred him to the comic books.
Yeah, I have a mass love for the X-Men, but hands down, I understand why in certain writings they only make certain characters very important, because let's face it, when you're dealing with the X-Men universe, you're dealing with a world event, a huge event. So to try and keep track of who's doing what, when, where, and how, like I could see it's just easier to write somebody off than it is to try and build an intricate storyline with all of these individual characters. Because I mean, hands down, X-Men had like X-Men, X-Factor, X-Force, Generation X, and those were all separate comics. So somehow,
the way they've done it,
genius.
or the way they've done it in like at some points in the past, anyway, is that the teams split up, and I think this is largely a result of the '90s, anyway, the blue and gold team thing. Mm-hmm. And like one writer and artist will take one team, and the other will take the other team, and like characters from either team will like kind of move back and forth between the books. But like generally, if you're reading, like, let's say you're reading X-Men and your friend is reading Uncanny X-Men, one of you is going to be getting like Cyclops' team and the other one's going to be getting Storm's team.
Yeah,
basically. Or in the '90s that was the paradigm. Now it's like completely different. But to me, it would have worked better like if they let them have their own separate stories. But they tried way too much to like make all the stories go between all of the X books. So like to get a story, you had to buy like 8 comics every month, and it was too much money for a lot of people to keep up with.
That was all right, I guess, when comics were like $1 or $2, but kids don't have like $20 to throw down just on the X-Men. Not to mention, like, with all of those things written in, it was just massive upheavals and things like that. But the upside is we got like more in-depth storylines on like Cable, who was a character I still don't fully understand. Like, why the fuck did they bring in a time-traveling dude that's dealing with the parallax virus, and is using his psychic abilities to keep that from killing him, although it gives him a badass arm that kind of makes him look a little bit like Colossus? Don't understand.
Oh, Phalanx.
Phalanx. Yes.
Phalanx virus. Yeah. I don't know. And like then they with Cable and Strife, they did the whole thing. Well, one of them's the real son and one of them's a clone, and it just like eventually they toggled back and forth between that enough time that I think people just stopped caring.
Yeah. Well,
because I know I did. I'm like, hey, I don't care which one's real anymore. Like it just doesn't affect me. I don't know, like with the X-Men, like I feel like each time a writer picks up and they start their own like new book, like Joss Whedon wrote one for a while. I think his was called Astonishing X-Men.
Yes.
And like they, to an extent, the writers, especially when they're just picking up and starting their own new fresh run, like they pick the characters that they like. And I think it's interesting when you have a writer that picks characters that don't get used a lot. But it's to an extent, the X-Men have the same weakness that the Avengers have, except they have it much worse. Like the Avengers have had so many people that have been in the Avengers that like anytime someone new picks up the Avengers, they have to kind of like pick and choose which characters they want. Because if you have everybody, then you have too many characters to manage. Mm-hmm. But like the X-Men, it's even worse because as many people have been in the Avengers, like there are billions of like mutants, which is kind of why they had their whole House of M thing where they got rid of a lot of the mutants.
Right. Well, and I think that was a really smart ordeal because at that given point, the world was mutants were a larger entity than the human race, so the entire thought of basically racism it was being nixed because all the humans were going to die off and mutants were going to rule. So to rebuild that kind of angst and separation and all that, getting rid of all the mutants was a brilliant idea.
I don't know. It's a polarizing story. A lot of people like hate it and think it's just complete and utter bullshit, and a lot of people think it's good. And I think largely that depends on whether or not like some of your favorite characters were no longer mutants anymore. Like Jubilee, for instance, had always been one of my favorite mutants. And
why? She makes sparkles.
Hey, she's one of the most powerful mutants. Those sparkles aren't just sparkles, dude. They're like fucking explosive plasmoids. All right? All right?
She has a twin. Her name was Dazzler.
No, that Dazzler's not her twin. Dazzler was invented in the 80s, and Dazzler makes like her shit's based on sound. Dazzler's one of the most like dated characters because you can tell she was made in the 80s. She's like Longshot with his mullet and his leather jacket and throwing knives. Like, there are characters that you can look at and be like, these must have been invented in the 80s.
Jubilee was a shit character, and someone said, Jubilee's my favorite, and could never give a reason why, but had the power to give a reason, so they just made her power more powerful.
Jubilee, no, I like Jubilee because her power was like, it was kind of like the Hulk, like it depended on how angry she was, at least when she was younger. She can make them, she can make her explosions more powerful, if she was angrier, but... No, I liked her because she's so 90s with her yellow trench coat and her fucking sunglasses and shit. I'm aware that's not like how the character has stayed, but just like House of M taking her powers and then she's like a fucking vampire now or some shit. They've probably like moved on from that. She's probably
I didn't know about the vampire
something
thing.
Different. Yeah, it's so stupid. I'm like, man, there went a character that I loved because she was always my favorite little Wolverine sidekick. Because over the years, Wolverine has had little sidekick chicks.
Yeah.
That's just, I guess, his thing is young women following him around, which may or may not be creepy.
Okay, well, okay.
So we'll not delve into how creepy that is.
Wait. Let's stay on that creepy factor for a quick second. It would be extremely weird. It is weird that if Wolverine started dating like a 20-something-year-old, in general, like if he was in his 40s, that 20-year difference would be a bit much. But is it weird if like a 150-year-old Wolverine dates a 20-year-old?
I mean, apparently not, because we have a movie where like Robert Pattinson's like 200 or whatever he is, and he's hitting on high school chicks.
But
I mean, I guess it depends on what age you were when you got frozen by time, as it were. So, like, Wolverine's, like, looks like he's in his 30s, so,
But he wasn't frozen in time. Like, all of that shit happened.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, like, all the shit happened to, the vampires in the shitty Twilight books, but, he's stuck forever looking like he's 17 or whatever, so...
Yeah, just, like... I guess people got to get their grandpa
on. But kind of bringing it back to the movie, like Days of Future Past, I was kind of excited for because that was always one of my favorite storylines. Although, in the comics, Kitty Pryde's the one that actually goes back. In the movies, she has some. I don't know if her power has like evolved.
Because
they don't explain it. Like her power may have evolved, or she may have like gotten a new power, but she can like send people's consciousnesses back in time by like putting her hands around their head and like doing stuff.
Well, no, that's one of the I watched the same Jeremy Johns review. I think it was on the spoiler review. He said it. it might have been the regular one, but he's like, Kitty Pryde can make people time travel. Okay.
Yeah, and there's a nifty like because like they're losing the war. Almost all the mutants are dead. It starts off in a like Terminator 2 future basically, and like the opening scene or one of the opening scenes is like you've got Bishop, Sunspot, Iceman,
Sunspot's in
Kitty
this?
Pryde, and Blink.
Wait, really quick. How did
a
they
guy
do
that I
Sunspot?
think is Warpath.
Really quick. How did they do Sunspot? Like, did they black mask him or blackface him, or did they racist Sunspot?
No, he's a guy, and he can shoot fire and turn into all fire, kind of like.
Okay, so they didn't.
It's
have
basically
him...
Johnny stormed him.
Okay, so they didn't black him out like he has been forever.
Yeah, I mean they didn't try to do anything avant-garde with the character. I mean, he's just a dude, and then like he can go full on fire, just like Iceman can go full on ice. But yeah, no, and then I think it's Warpath, I guess. He's one of the two because Warpath had like apparently a brother or a cousin or whatever that had like almost the exact same powers.
Did he
like
throw random
a really
tomahawks?
strong Native American guy with knives?
It was knives, not tomahawks. Then that wasn't Warpath. Boo. Kidding.
But one of the like, he's kind of useless in this opening.
We're
he's
sorry.
a guy with knives against Sentinels. Like, I mean, granted, everybody proves to be useless. Like, but it shows like they're all getting killed like in this opening scene, and then like you're like, well, okay, why are Kitty Pryde and Bishop running away? And you find out like they go into a locked vault room and she's like zapping his head, and then you see him like disappear because like the Sentinels are finally breaking through the room where they're at, and she's like, too late, assholes, and they disappear, and you're like, what the what happened? And then the next scene is them like hanging out in a completely different place, and everybody's alive, and you're like, wait, what?
Well, wasn't Bishop's power time travel?
Who?
Bishop.
No, Bishop was a time traveler. No, his power is that he can absorb energy and like shoot it back out.
Right, that's right.
But yeah, no. Then the next scene is like a brand new, like super futuristic version of the Blackbird.
Okay.
Is flying in, and like they land, and they're there with all these characters, and like you see Magneto and Professor X and Wolverine and Storm hop off the plane, and
Professor X doesn't hop.
his hovery wheelchair slides down. But they're like, okay, tell us what you've been doing, and they're like, well, here's how we've been surviving. We hide out. We get warned that the Sentinels are coming, and so I just run off with Bishop, send him back in time I forget how long she says. She sends Bishop back in time, like, into his younger body.
Okay.
Like, younger by a day or whatever, so that he can warn them that the Sentinels will be there, like, the next day, and then they just move, and then it never happens. Like, they never get killed.
That hurt my head.
So like, oh no, it's a super simple concept. Like every time the Sentinels find them, they basically prevent them from ever being found by going back in time and changing where they're hiding.
Yeah, I know. I hate time
she's
travel.
like, that's how we've been hiding, and then like you can tell like Wolverine, or you can tell Magneto and Professor X have been like thinking about it, and they're like, I think it could work. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna need you to send us back to like 1973. Because they had been like talking, because like she's like, no, I don't know if I can do that. I mean, I can send people back like a couple of like maybe a week. They're like, no, this all started in 1973 because Mystique assassinated Bolivar Trask, and that's what caused the government to like fund the Sentinel program that he was working on. Oh. And they're like, if you can go back and stop that, we can stop this from ever happening. And so she's like, well, yeah, but I can't send you back because Charles wants to go back because, he's obviously the smartest one.
Well, and
He's
got
like,
his
he's like,
powers are
I need to
very
go back.
useful.
And she's like, no, I can't do that. She's like, when you do, it like kind of fragments the mind. And if I were to send someone back to 1973, it would just like completely destroy their mind. And then Wolverine's like, what if you send somebody who's already had their mind fucked with, and it can kind of have a way of healing itself.
Oh yeah, yeah, that would work.
And so like Wolverine, like they're like, oh yeah, I guess you're the only person we can send back. All right, so here's what you got to do. And they basically said, like, a lot of people, like, I've seen some people complain, they're like, really, Wolverine's the main character again, and he's really not. Like, he's the linchpin. I mean, they have to send him back for everything to happen, and he is a prominent character while he's there. But once he's back in the 70s, and once he's found Charles, and then they go spring Magneto, because they decide that it's going to take both of them to get working together to convince Mystique not to do her stuff. Yeah, no, once he's got the other guys, like, they kind of take the center stage like they did in First Class, and it's a Magneto and Charles story, which I like because I really like Fassbender and McAvoy playing those roles.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, no, like it was awesome. Like Quicksilver, I didn't like his character design. His hair color looks weird, and like his outfit looks kind of weird. Although I do like his Pink Floyd T-shirt. That's kind of awesome. I'm not entirely sure the headphones that he uses in the movie existed in 1973, but I'm just gonna ignore that. Everything else looks pretty spot on for the time. And worst case scenario, we'll just say that he's so fast he ran into the future to get them.
Wait,
so
what?
fuck it. He ran into the future, went to Costco and bought him some good headphones, and then ran back. But no, he's like hands
not fast
down,
enough.
he has the best scene in the whole movie.
Go on.
In the movie. Well, because they're like, well, Magneto's being held like 100 feet or 100 stories below the fucking Pentagon. Like, there ain't no way we're gonna spring him. And Wolverine's like, I think I know a guy. And they show up at the house, and his mom answers the door. We're like, oh god, what has he stolen this time? Like, no, we just need to talk to him. They go down into the basement, and he's got like all these TVs and fucking like boxes upon boxes of like Hostess cakes and shit that you can tell he's just stolen because he's so fast. And he's like, oh well, he's kind of younger than when I knew him. They're like, yeah, we're gonna need you to help us break in the Pentagon, and you can tell like the only reason he helps him is because he's like, fuck yeah, that's a challenge. But he goes in like when he springs Magneto because he like vibrates his hands to break the glass that they're keeping him in, and all of that.
They gave him some flash
he
abilities.
grabs Magneto's like has his hand behind his head, and he's like, why are you doing that? And he's like, keep you from getting whiplash. And he's like, what? Whiplash. Because all the like once they break the glass, all the guards like show up. The hallway's full of, like 30 guys with guns or whatever, and you just see him go down the hall, and like he's going so fast, all the guys like fucking fly against the wall. They're like flying through the air and shit. But when they get to this room where there's like 3 or 4 guys, and they all start like shooting their guns at him, and like Magneto's getting ready to like fuck them up, and like Professor X was like, hey, we just sprung you, but like for us to get you out of here, you got to promise not to kill anybody. And like they're having their argument while they're getting shot at, and like all of a sudden you just see everything kind of like stop. And that's when Quicksilver like runs around the room. And they could have just had him, like, in a movie that was done, like, by a normal person. They could have just had him run around the room and, like, move the bullets. But no. Not this movie. In this movie, dude runs around the room, is, like, flipping his finger through some, like, sauce that's flying through the air and tasting it. And he's, like, moving guys' fists to their face so that they, like, punch themselves. And it's golden. Like, he goes around the room, is like changing all this shit, and then when he stops and everything's like it falls down, everyone's like But he has like Oh, he has a golden moment with Magneto though, because when he realizes Magneto can control metal, he's like, "Hey, my mom knew a guy that could do that once." And that's all they say. They don't ever like Magneto's like never like, "Oh, you might be my son," or yeah, there's nothing like that. There's just that one line like, "My mom knew a guy that could do that." Uh, it's gold. Like,
It
and
sounds
that's
like
it. They use him well. They use him for like that little bit of the movie, and then he's gone. They don't try to like, keep him around because
Good.
obviously he's a kid, and they don't want to like endanger him more than they already have.
I mean, it looks like he's got the attitude right. I'm just looking at a couple of pictures of the guy.
Yeah, his character, and you can't blame the actor for that. That he didn't say, "Hey, I want really weird looking hair and a weird outfit." Um, but no, the guy playing him has a he's perfect. He's perfectly cast. I think
Oh, that's
for
cool.
like a very young Quicksilver.
Well,
Um,
and the oh crap, where was I going with this? Fuck. Quicksilver. It sounds like based off of what you've just said, they gave him some flash abilities because he, even at the height of his power, he only went like 250 miles an hour. He never was that fast. Like he was fast, but not like stupid fast. Not like I'm going to vibrate atoms to shatter glass and shit like that. Ugh. So,
but the other like nugget they have in the movie is they shit, what am I
I
trying
have
to think
no
of?
idea.
Oh, they the reason Magneto's even in jail is because he got blamed for like not publicly or whatever, I guess, but he's in jail for assassinating JFK. And Charles is like, "Really? A bullet magically curving through the air? Really?" He's like, "You didn't think we'd figure it was you?" And he's like, "Dude, I didn't kill the president." He's like, "I was trying to save him." And he's like, "He was one of us." And like they never really go into detail over like whether JFK was a mutant or whether he just like supported mutants, but I would assume they were saying that JFK was a mutant,
Right.
um, which is kind of funny. But like, yeah, no, it's really good. Like there are moments in the movie that like it gets really emotional, kind of.
Okay.
Um,
I'm listening. Like I
Wolver-
have no input. I just
Wolverine doesn't have his metal claws, so there's some funny scenes with that, like some funny lines, like they're going through a metal detector, and you just see him get the look on his face, like God damn it, and then he's like, wait, it didn't go off, because like they send him far enough back in time that he hadn't had the shit done to him yet.
Oh right.
Uh, because they're not like sending Wolverine back, they're sending his brain into the brain of his younger body. And they even tell him, they're like, if you're successful and it changes history, you're going to be the only one who remembers it because your brain's going to snap back and it'll be the brain that remembered everything.
Oh true.
So for us, none of this will have ever happened and we won't know. You'll be the only one. So when because okay, well, going in, this shouldn't really be a spoiler, but going in, you he's going to be successful because they wouldn't have a movie where he's not successful. It would be depressing to have everybody just die. But
No, I'd say kill them all.
well, no, because they want to find a way to revitalize the franchise, and part of that was having to be able to erase the other movies from ever having happened.
Yeah.
Because that gives you a lot of ground to cover again.
With a new Xavier and stuff like that.
Yeah, with new Xavier and a new Magneto, you can go show stories that happened in the 70s and 80s and 90s with them now. But yeah, no, like
Yeah, no.
he pops back to the future at the end of the movie, obviously after he's done everything. And for a minute, you're like, they try to play with you because he's listening to the same like song from the 70s that he was when he woke up in the 70s. And like he rolls over and he's got this like future space age like alarm clock that's playing. It says it's playing oldies, and we're like, clever. He gets out of bed and like the end scene is so money, like when he wakes up in the Xavier school, because they bring back people that they had kept really secret, or at least secret enough that I didn't find out about it. I imagine there were people that were like digging around and found out about it beforehand, but like Kelsey Grammer comes walking down the hall as Beast.
Oh, nice.
And you're like, yeah, they brought him back, even though I didn't love his Beast, but still, I mean, I guess he wasn't bad. I just felt like they didn't give him enough to do in Last Stand. But then he's like going down the hall and he's seeing like Storm and everybody's alive, and like Bobby and Rogue are back together, because this is like the only scene that Anna Paquin actually ended up in the movie.
Even though I
and
heard
so
that
then
she
it
did
shows
a
like
lot
Kitty
of,
and Colossus. Oh, do what now?
I heard she did a lot of scenes and they just clipped it all
They
the way
cut
down.
them, yeah. I don't know if it's because they couldn't make it fit or what, but
It's because she had clothes on. She has a strict like clothesless contract.
oh, don't pick on Sookie.
Oh, I'm picking on Sookie.
But no, like
That's a terrible show.
her and Bobby are still apparently dating in this version of history, and so like when he walks past another classroom, you see Kitty and Colossus together, and it's like, oh, they went with the classic kind of relationship stuff. But then he walks in to, like, he's going to the back office because I get, instinctually, I guess he knows it's back there, or it's still laid out the exact same way it always was. And he sees someone with red hair, and he's like, and he walks up to her, and it's Jean, and he's about to like he's like talking to her, and he's about to like reach out and like grab her face. And like you see a hand come out of nowhere and grab him, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What are you doing there?" And it pans over, and you see fucking Cyclops, and it's like, "Yes, they brought back Cyclops and Jean, because none of that shit ever happened." And so they roll out, and like he's talking to Professor X, and he's like, "Don't you have a class to be teaching, Logan?" He's like, "I teach a class." He's like, "Yeah, history." And he's like, "Yeah, see, that's going to be a problem because I'm a little fuzzy on the history." He's like, and that's when Professor X realizes, oh, okay, you must have, because he had talked to Charles in the 70s and told him he was from the future. He's like, okay, so this must be the moment that you popped back to. And he's like, I'm going to need to be caught up on everything from like 1973 forward. And so he's like, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. And it's just like, I love that whole end scene, because it's basically a big fuck you to like Brett Ratner's movie. They bring back the characters that like had died, and just, yeah. They're like, fuck you, you don't kill off Scott Summers and Jean Grey, especially not in the same movie. And then, the end credit scene, you get to see Apocalypse. And people are saying the Four Horsemen, although if they were there, I must have missed them because I was distracted by Apocalypse, like holding his hands up in the air and like single-handedly like hovering bricks around and building a pyramid. Because apparently he can do that.
Well, yeah, he's considered the first mutant.
Oh yeah, I know, but I just like never knew that he had like weird like Jean Grey powers, basically.
They, as far as I understand, his powers were never thoroughly defined, so he can just do things like body morphine, shoot laser beams, all that kind of crap. So I don't know what they'll give him, because obviously, like with the Kitty Pryde thing, as far as I know, then again, if Corey's here, because Kitty Pryde's one of his favorites, she never was able to do that. Like, her power was just extremely simple.
Hey, you say phasing through walls and shit and being able to drag people with you is simple, but Kitty Pryde ended up being one of the coolest characters. Like when she learned how to be a ninja and shit. Can you imagine how useful it would be for a ninja assassin type person to be able to go in and out of walls?
Yeah, no, I absolutely.
This is awesome, West.
No, I
don't hate on Kitty Pryde.
No, I wasn't hating on it. It's just the her sending shit through time. Like you pass through physical objects. Like that was her power, and now I guess they have an evolution of her power or something. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, like in the X-Men comics, like later on, some of the writers had introduced this idea of
Don't get my
they,
shit mistaken, buddy.
they introduced the idea of like evolution, like which was one way of explaining. In the comics, that's how they explained Beast's transformation. Because in like 1963, he was just a big dude that was acrobatic and shit and could grip stuff with his feet. And then like, you know, later on is when he became like all blue and shit. And like there are some stories where it's like, oh, it's a mutation, like his mutation evolved. And then in other stories, they do like they do in the movies, where it's like, oh, he took some shit and it caused that to happen. And then like I think later they kind of married the two, where it's like, oh, he took some shit and it basically forced the evolution to happen faster than it would have. So they kind of like combined both. And then like later in the comics, when he starts truly looking beastly, like his face starts looking like a lion thing. It's like supposed to be that he's evolving again. And so some of the mutants did end up like with their powers doing things they didn't used to do, or like getting an entirely new power, or so I mean it's possible that that's like what they're doing, is that like she just got a new power, because I mean it doesn't seem at all, they don't make it sound like it's at all related to her ability to run face through shit. Although I guess it kind of is when you think about it, except instead of walking through physical objects, she's walking through time. Yeah, I don't know.
Which what's this thing that I keep seeing pop up online about Channing Tatum being Gambit?
I don't know. It's got me kind of worried.
Like Gambit's a really cool character. Channing Tatum is a reasonable actor. And when I say reasonable, I mean he fits one role very, very well, and he has to be directed extremely well in order to get a halfway decent role out of him.
I mean, and I think Bryan Singer could direct him.
But
it's
Gambit,
I don't know. I would rather them find a really good unknown.
Yeah, Gambit's... I mean, there are two things. Like, Gambit has to be ridiculously handsome, and he has to have, like, a swagger about how he fights. Those are the two biggest deals with Gambit. Because he grew up in the League of Assassins, and a League of Assassins that, for some reason, is located in, like, Louisiana. Never quite understood that. Like, I don't... And oh no, it's thieves. My bad. It's thieves and assassins. He grew up with the thieves, and that's how he gained all of his skills.
Yeah. Oh, interestingly enough, like I was gonna say that while you're talking about casting, Evan Peters, I thought he gave us a Quicksilver that's gonna be hard to beat, and it's ironic because the person who's playing Quicksilver in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is what's his name? Aaron Taylor Johnson, the guy that was just in Godzilla, and he was also in Kick-Ass with Evan Peters. Because Evan Peters played the, like, you know how he has two friends in Kick-Ass?
Yeah.
Evan Peters was the one that wasn't the guy with glasses, the other one.
Oh yeah.
And Aaron Taylor Johnson was Kick-Ass, and he's now going to be Quicksilver in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I think he's got the chops for it.
Yeah, because I mean he's he plays like a military dude, and he was ripped in Godzilla. So I mean it's obvious that he's not just like he can play something besides like nerdy dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I think he's gonna have a hard time beating the X-Men Days of Future Past Quicksilver. And that's just like, can I say how weird that is to me that like they even felt the need to put Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch into the Avengers stuff. Like, I mean, I know Scarlet Witch has been there in the past, but couldn't you just not have her? Because I would rather Quicksilver and her not be there than them not be mutants. Like, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're not mutants. They're, like, I guess they're kids that were experimented on with, like, Loki's little space-age laser stick that he had in the first Avengers that he lost.
Yeah.
So it's like instead of the age of mutants, they're like, it's the age of miracles, because we can't say mutants because Fox owns that now. It's just like,
No,
because that's the after credit scene in Captain America is them in
yeah.
like cages being experimented on.
Well,
And it's just like, really, they got their powers from a stick. They're
well,
not Daredevil. Like, Stick didn't train them. That was a joke because Stick, the character.
yeah.
Boom.
Hmm.
Uh, I
Sure.
mean, just
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, the characters themselves may still end up being cool, but they have like the lamest origin.
Well, I feel the thing that makes Scarlet Witch and uh, Quicksilver really good stories is not the origin. Like their origins, yes, they were born done. Like like you want to talk about a simple origin that bores the shit out of people? How'd you become that way? I was born this way. Oh, okay. But it's where Scarlet Witch's power fractures her brain, like ridiculously. And Quicksilver spends a
Well,
lot
I'm
of
not
time.
saying that you can't have good stories with them.
Well, but Quicksilver spends a lot of time trying to make sure that she is kind of like okay. And as House of M has shown us that like she loses it, and then Quicksilver's big story arc comes in to play after House of M because he's basically like a god. He temporarily gives powers back, and he's walking around in the aftermath of M as Jesus for mutants. Like Quicksilver is Jesus. I don't know if they're gonna like hang his ass to a cross or something, but he literally walks around as Jesus. Like his new power, based off of the statement "No more mutants," is to give people their powers back temporarily. That said, like after the House of M, about I think it's like 150 or 160 mutants or something like that existed. Do you know why that worked and how that happened?
No, not really.
Okay, so with the way Scarlet Witch's power works is it alters reality, but if you know how it should be, you aren't susceptible to the illusion. Her power is so strong that she can alter reality, but everyone who wasn't affected just remembered who they were. One of the interesting things is if you are reading the House of M Wolverine comic, he's part of Shield, which is I wouldn't be surprised if they stuck Wolverine and Shield and tried to use a little bit of House of M to just get him in another movie. But he's sitting up in the plane and he's with a couple of other mutants and they're sitting there and they're talking and he goes, "Holy shit, I remember." And they're like, "What do you remember?" And he goes, "Everything," and jumps out of a plane.
Yeah.
But that's like when she claimed, because of how his brain is fractured and everything, she said no more mutants, which was going to go unanimous. It fixed his brain, and he remembered everything. So, of course, you can't get rid of one of your flagship mutants, right? Which was just, it's interesting on how they dealt with the idea of like we've got this overwhelming thing, so let's tone it back a little bit because
he did lose his power when she altered reality. He gained new powers when he was exposed to some kind of mist.
who what
Quicksilver.
oh it was as yeah.
Quicksilver loses his powers of speed when his sister alters reality, but gains new powers courtesy of the Inhumans' Terrigen Mist. The mist gives Quicksilver the ability to displace himself out of mainstream time and space and jump into the future. The character can summon several time-displaced duplicates of himself and appear to teleport by jumping into the future and then returning to the present at a new location. By voluntarily embedding fragments of the Terrigen crystals into his own body, the character could empower former mutants with extreme versions of their superhuman abilities. The effect, however, was usually fatal. The crystals are subsequently forced from the character's body by the mutant Richter, leaving him without these abilities. Quicksilver inexplicably regains his mutant super speed powers after having a series of hallucinations.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I was trying to look up like what his powers were. Originally, you're right. Originally, he could only run at the speed of sound, but apparently he was exposed to some kind of uh, isotope that made it to where he could run at Mach speed or supersonic speeds up to Mach 10. Um, and the ability to withstand all the effects that would normally come with that, like friction, oxygen, impact, things like that. Let's see. The character speed allows him to perform feats such as create cyclone strength winds, run up walls, and across bodies of water. It has been revealed that one of the reasons for his abrasive and impatient personality is that it seems to him that the rest of the world is moving in slow motion and that he is constantly waiting for it to catch up. As he once explained, have you ever had a day where you're at the ATM and you're in a hurry because you're running late, but the person in front of you doesn't know how to use the ATM and they're taking forever? Now imagine what it must be like to spend every day surrounded by people who don't know how to use the ATM.
Oh, shit. Searching around on the internet, I came across somebody proposing who should have played Quicksilver, and maybe an older Quicksilver. I would back this. The guy who played Malfoy from Harry Potter, if he could lose the British accent, yeah, like he looks like Quicksilver. A really, really, really skinny Quicksilver, but nonetheless Quicksilver.
I don't know. I haven't seen him in anything other than Harry Potter, so I don't know what kind of range he has. He could play Quicksilver if we were getting Quicksilver the villain, maybe. But,
yeah.
you know, I've not seen him in anything else, so I can't really, like, speak to his acting abilities. Although he did a really good fucking Draco Malfoy.
Yeah. Well, out of curiosity...
Or are you talking about his Daddy Malfoy or Harry Potter's, like, worst nightmare Malfoy?
Harry Potter's worst nightmare Malfoy.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say Daddy Malfoy would be, like, really old Quicksilver.
No, like, just Draco.
Okay, Draco, there we go.
Yeah, Tom Felton or something like that? Felton, yeah.
So...
Okay, really...
Real quick, while we're on X-Men, like, who is your favorite X-Men character?
I hate you.
And they don't have to be... I don't know, they don't have to have even been around for very long. I just, like, I'm gonna limit it to, like... Because people are always like, Deadpool! And I'm like, yeah, was he ever really an X-Men?
No, he was given the powers. He was never born as a mutant. And I'm looking at things that strictly...
Well, I mean, I thought he was a mutant. I'm just... I don't know. I don't know that much about Deadpool because he's a character to me that's funny in the comics and maybe like a video game, but people keep going, we want a Deadpool movie, and I'm like, that would just be a terrible movie.
I think it would be a really fun movie, but it would be like an hour and a half long. Like, there'd be nothing serious about it.
Well, he did first appear in New Mutants in 1991.
Oh, I guess he is from the
So
Marvel.
he may have been a X-Men character. He was in the X-Force books.
I still, as it boils down with X-Men, like, it isn't, even if we included like everything that came from the X-Men universe, such as Gladiator and the Juggernaut and all that other stuff, my favorite characters is more of like a triptych because I think I'm more in love with the storyline, is Rogue, Gambit, and Iceman.
You like Rogue, Gambit, and Iceman because of their love triangle?
Yeah, just because of how that whole thing comes involved. And like Rogue's character in general is probably the most upsetting character I have ever read because she has to deal with the fact that she wants to love and care for somebody and she can't touch them. Yeah, I couldn't imagine what that would be like because like her and Gambit have fucked a few times, especially when they reached that area where all mutant powers were negated. Like Rogue didn't have her power, Gambit didn't have his power, and he was like, "Oh, we fucking." we fucking right now. But she has almost killed Gambit on a ridiculous amount of times, and the beauty of Gambit is he is so addicted to her that he will continuously try and have that. Because it's like the one thing that he can't steal. Because he can't touch it.
Yeah. I don't know. Overall, my favorite character from the Xmen books, and it still counts because he's still technically an X-Men at some points in the stories, is Magneto. I just think Magneto is such a great, and it is nothing related to the fact that he's ridiculously powerful. It's just like, I like his whole story, his ideology, his whole, because Charles Xavier always came off as more, and they're really like, they're supposed to be kind of analogous to like Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, like the two different approaches.
Yeah.
And like the whole like Charles Xavier's whole I'm passive, like it just never appealed to me because it seemed like that's the way that you get wiped out, is by not fighting back. Like, yeah. I always kind of sided with Magneto because he's not like a bad guy. He maybe goes about things in not the best ways sometimes, but he's not like... There have been people that have written him as like a straight up villain, but that's usually not his bent. It's usually that he's doing what he thinks is right to save his kind.
Well, he's also going about it as a like, this is the solution. When that's not the case, it's just that's an extreme solution. His is the idea of basically, let's light a nuclear bomb.
But see, like the cartoons and the movies, they've left out a facet of Charles Xavier that often gets overlooked because everyone likes it's Patrick Stewart. He's such a sweet old man.
No, Xavier's a dick.
Xavier's a straight up dick. Xavier has like seen entire X-Men teams like wiped out and then erased everybody's memory of it. He's like, no, there was never another X-Men team that I sent off to die. That never happened.
Yeah.
I mean, Charles can do some shady ethical shit. At least Magneto's just straight up about it. He's like, look, I'm saving my kind. I don't care if that means all the humans have to die. And I mean, I can kind of get on board with that. I mean, there are a lot of humans trying to wipe out the mutants, and he doesn't want to go quietly into that good night.
Well, I think...
I get that.
After thinking
but
about
no, the reason I never liked Deadpool, like, and I just remembered why, like, sorry for the tangent.
Oh yeah.
Is that Deadpool's like very obviously a ripoff of Deathstroke?
Oh yeah.
DC, and it ties back into my like deep-seated hatred of Rob Liefeld as an artist, because apparently when he invented him, he turned him into like, I guess the other person that was writing, Fabian Nicieza, I don't know how to pronounce his name, was writing New Mutants, and like when he gave it to him, the guy was like, this is Deathstroke from Teen Titans. And so like they named him Wade Wilson as a joke. I always wondered like why the names were so similar, because there's Slade Wilson as Deathstroke and then Wade Wilson as Deadpool. Yeah, I'm like, really? That's just like straight up lifting a character. Really?
Well, it is very common. Like, you can just look at certain characters and be like, oh, you're the same as this other character from your competitor. So that's not what I would consider an uncommon thing. It's trying to get sales up, and that was back when you could pull that shit. And for whatever reason, like, Marvel and DC just like never suit each other. As far as I know, like, they were just like, oh, I see what you did there. Because you've got similar, like, Batman characters and Superman characters. And, I mean, Quicksilver has been kind of considered the Flash. It's why the Flash's abilities kept escalating to a point that was way beyond what they could have ever seen. So, I'm not too upset about that as an overall. But after thinking about it some more, like, favorite character hands down, if you had asked me back when we were like teenagers, I would have said Morph, just because like he was funny and he was witty and all that shit. I would stand with Rogue. Rogue's power is so ridiculously cool, and once they learn that if she is willing to take the Life Force, she gains that power. She is theoretically unstoppable.
Well, except I don't think she could ever like fully take it from Logan.
Well, Logan's a special case.
Yeah, Wolverine's like the lynch. He's like my follow-up character. Like I wanted to say, I want to say Wolverine's my favorite X-Men character, but like I feel like that ties me into all the people that like him and don't really know anything about him. They just like him because he's a badass. Like, and I don't want to like. And I'll be honest, I don't know everything there is to know about Logan, but I've always found him interesting because, and it is in his case, it's because of his powers. It's not because he's a badass. Like his powers are just so like fucking unique and broken.
Well,
Like
the Logan.
dude can like not die really when you think about it.
Yeah.
Although they're supposedly killing him off later this year. We'll see how that goes. See how long he stays dead.
Logan's one of those characters, like, I enjoy him, and I get why he is such an interesting character, because when they had the whole, like, I don't know how old he is, that made him, okay, he can have any storyline. Why does he know how to fight so well? Okay, we'll throw him in Asia for a little bit. Why does he know how to do this? And you can just continuously fuck with this character until...
Yeah, when you didn't know, there was so much room for interesting stories, but then once they were like revealed it kind of took away the mystery.
Well, right. And I think he's like close to 200 or something like that. I know he was in the like 1800s.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think X-Men Origins kind of got some of that stuff close to where it was, like at least like as far as where and when he was born.
Yeah, but as an overall, like I've never considered him like the character I flock to, just because it's kind of like listening to the radio. Like you turn on the station and you're constantly repeated. I'm not gonna deny Wolverine's a cool character. I just think they're other better, cooler characters like
he's definitely overused as one bad thing about him.
Well, like the Phoenix, and even more so the Dark Phoenix, because you're dealing with a space entity that is basically growing up in the mind of, or in the body of this person that is loved and cared for, and then you've also got things like what's his name Colossus, who is just a cool character. Like if we need a fight scene, we're gonna put Colossus in it and he's gonna do something fucking cool.
Yeah, Iceman in that opening scene where everybody's getting killed, he gets killed like straight up hardcore. The Sentinel like breaks his head off while he's in ice form. I'm like, damn, whoa, that's harsh. But yeah, like that, because that reminded me, because Colossus gets like, everybody gets taken out in that scene except fucking I guess basically Bishop, because he's the one that gets sent back to stop it from ever happening that one time.
And Iceman is ridiculous. Like when I forget where the levels came from. I think it was level 1 through 5, and the ones prior to X3 X3, the ones where they're like, your level is based off of how you can affect the world. They wound up finding out that Iceman in his ultimate form was a level 4 because he can freeze the planet. He couldn't destroy it, but he could freeze a large portion of it, which I found really, really cool. Especially
I think whoever invented that like is of the same creative level of George Lucas, like when he came up with his fucking midichlorians. Like really, they've never been mentioned in a Star Wars movie, and you mention it in Episode 1, and then it like never gets talked about again because you felt like you had to have some kind of like imaginary rating system so that we understood that Anakin was special. Like really, you couldn't just say that he's powerful. You have to be like, he has a high midichlorian count. Like the whole mutant level thing's just it's Munchkin bullshit, really, because you're like, oh, this person's super powerful because they can freeze the planet. Oh, and while he's distracted doing that, someone could kill him. So yeah, but not really. If you're a glass cannon, that doesn't really make you special. Like, so I never, like, there's always checks and balances. There's always true. Rock, paper, scissors. It's like saying the scissors is a level 6 in the paper 8, but you know, paper, it's up rock. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just like I always thought the like level rating thing of their powers was kind of stupid.
I enjoyed it because once they started introducing the evolutions of their powers, it was like, okay, so to what scale are we gonna push this at? And it helped show the limitations of what their evolution was actually doing. Because at first, when I heard about the evolutions, I was like, man, this is some bullshit. Like, why do we have to have, like, the next stage in their mutation? But it took them until their mid-20s that they've been in for the past 15 years to get to the next step of their evolution. And I want to say the evolution
that kind of
happened...
makes sense, because that reflects, like, growth and development. Whereas, like, giving them a rating just seems kind of fucking stupid, because it's based on some kind of, like, circle jerk fantasy baseball mentality that, like, whoever decided on that had. Like, ooh, I want Rogue on my team because she's level 3. Like, it's so fucking stupid. It's just so stupid.
I think Rogue was considered a level 5 because she could take any power, she could use any power.
I mean, she's got to touch you, though.
Well, yeah.
Like, I mean, like, it's like the people who thought of this, like, think of the power in a vacuum. Like, I mean, technically, the only person, like, to me anyway, mutant wise, that's like the end all be all as far as power is Magneto, because there are points where writers have made him so powerful he could make people explode because everybody's got iron in their bodies. Like, he could fucking destroy the Earth by fucking with the poles. Like,
Polaris was more powerful than him.
Yeah, no, depending on who's writing her.
Well, the general consensus
Polaris is always such, like, a shitty character. It's like the character that's invented that's obviously supposed to be Magneto's daughter, but then they're like, no, she's not. She just happens to have the exact same powers because we're not very creative, and we felt like people would like somebody that looked like she jumped out of a fucking Cyndi Lauper music video.
I thought she was Magneto's clone. I think that's what they've
done. I think they've done that story, and it's just like, who cares? It's like another thing with, like, the fucking Strife and Cable thing. It's like, who cares? No one cares.
Well,
oh, who's really Scott and Jean's son? No, who gives a fuck? Like, who cares if it's the bad guy? Like, they had Strife and Cable's the good clone. Like, even though that wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense for Apocalypse to have cloned it and gotten a good guy. Like, whoops, that didn't work out how you planned. I mean...
Well, in the Age of Apocalypse movie, yeah. I just want to see him rip off Angel's wings and put the metal ones on. That's it. That's my only hope. That said...
Oh, in Apocalypse?
Yeah, in the Apocalypse movie. That said, I think it's a good time to stop this X-Men rant, because I think we could talk about it for another, like, couple of hours, because the X-Men universe is so fucking big. Oh, it's so beautifully big. But I'll talk to you later, man.
Yeah. .com.
Hold on.
Will also...
Hold on. I wasn't recording yet.
God damn you, West.
You were listening to the Nerd Method podcast with West,
Chris,
and Chris.
Thank you for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you can find us at the Nerd... Oh, fuck!
Super professional.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go.
You can find us at thenerdmethod.com, which is our also blog site, but it will have our social media as well: Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Google+. So like us, subscribe, share our stuff. We appreciate it.
And if you would like to email us, you can email us at nerdmethodpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks very much for listening. 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 For listening.